If you have Indian agate beads and don't know what to make, this video is for you. Today I'll show you how to make 2 necklaces and a bracelet using Indian agate, Murano glass, chain, and heshi beads. So let's take a look at the materials and get started. To get started, we're first going to be using our gemstone orphan. We're going to make a necklace out of this one. So I'm going to show you how I have everything all lined up and what my pattern is planning on being. I'll do half the pattern, get down to the middle part of it, and then let you do the other half if you want to follow along. So this is what I do whenever I have gemstones and I want something to be primarily gemstones. So the majority of this necklace is going to be this Indian agate. What I wanted to do is I wanted to have a small bead down here at the center and then gradually get to the bigger beads. So this is going to be where our pendant is going to be sitting, is right in this area right here. So I wanted to have the lighter colors and then kind of move into a little bit more darker colors. And what I also did is I want to make sure that the beads are somewhat similar in the same color across from each other. So as you can see, I have everything lined up, and I'll tell you the different sizes and everything just in case you're having issues figuring out which bead is which. I'll tell you that here in just a little bit. But I have everything all lined up next to each other like this, so I can kind of visually say, okay, I like this color combination, I like this one, and so on and so forth. The one that I just kind of started thinking about was this bead and this bead right here. So those two are the 4mm Indian agates, but I don't know if I have any that are left over that would be similar in color. But that's what I'm kind of getting is, oh, you know what I could do? I just saw that. These two beads right here on either side of the disc, or the lentil bead right here, look like they can probably go this way, and then those two can get switched also. So let me just grab, because I don't want to mess up all of them. Just grab 2 of these guys out. But this is what I usually do whenever I'm doing any type of necklace and I'm using gemstones. Because gemstones, as we all know, even if it's cut from the same stone, there's always that possibility that you're going to get different variations from it. So now I'm just kind of looking and making sure that I'm happy with everything on the other side of it. And, you know, like this one's a good explanation also, because this one's got more of the purpley color, but then this one's more of the green color. Well, the last 2 of the ovals over here are more of the green color, and this one's a little bit more white. So it's not exact, it's not perfect, but we're getting kind of close to what we're wanting to do. So that's how I always start off with my gemstones. I'm also using today some soft flex wire. I'm using the beading wire, the 49 strand beading wire. I'm using the fluorite color today, which is kind of that light seafoamy green color. I just felt like it would look really, really well, that if it shines through by accident, if I don't get things tight enough, if you see a little bit of it, I felt like it would go along with that stone really well. I just had quite a bit left over, probably about 24 inches or so left over. I'm trying to make somewhere around an 18-ish inch necklace. I'm not quite sure on the actual length that I want to do just yet, but we'll find that out here in just a few moments. So what I'm going to start off doing first is I'm going to put on 3 seed beads, and I'm just starting off with 3. And then I'm going to start with our 4mm, but over here at the back of the necklace. So I'm going to string on the beads to where we're going to go from the back of the necklace towards the center, so that way we can string on our stone right away. Now when it comes to the rounds, we're going to start off with the 4mm round, go directly into the 6 and directly into the 8. Now the next bead is an oval bead. On either side of the oval, I'm going to go ahead and put a seed bead. Kind of helps to break up that green just a little bit. Just have that little bit of a pop of a pink color. And this color is really, really good. I mean, I really feel like that goes very well with the stone colors. And then now we go downward. So now we're going to do an 8, a 6, and a 4. And now we come up to our lintel beads. On either side of the lintel, excuse me, on either side of the lintel, we're going to put a seed bead on that as well. So then that's the way that looks. So just continuing on, we're going to go all the way down to the center, and then I'll break away and let you finish if you would like to follow along, because it'll be the same thing on either side. I just wanted to kind of go through the process of how I usually put my gemstone necklaces together. And this is the same type of process whether I am stringing things like I am today, or if I am using bead weaving techniques. It's a similar process. Whenever you have variations in stones like this, I always will measure or laying them out like this, and that way I have a pattern that I can follow, and that symmetry is what I'm going for. Now if symmetry is not what you're going for, then that's perfectly fine too. You're always, always, always welcome to do whatever is on your mind. Where you want to take your project is your prerogative. Trying to think of a word, I didn't know what to say there. Alright, so, whoops, getting down to the last 6 and the last 4. And then that brings us to the center of the necklace. So this is what it looks like all strung on, with the seed beads and everything. So I'll hold it up just a little bit. There you go, now you can kind of see it. So you can see just that little bit of pop of pink color with the seed beads in between the lentils and the oval beads. So down here in the center, we're going to put, I believe, only 3. I don't think we're going to need 4. But I'm going to pick up 3 seed beads, then I'm going to pick up that bail, and I'm going to hold the seed beads above the bail. And I think 3 is going to be just fine, because I just want something to where the bail can sit at, but not necessarily be on top of the 4mm beads. So then now we would put our stone on, and then I'm going to go ahead and put the first 4mm. So on this one, just make sure you're going backwards, because we started at the back of the necklace, now we're down here at the center of the necklace. And then put that one back on just to see and make sure that it hangs the way that I want it. So yeah, that'll look nice, just like that. Alright, so that's all you do with this first part. So go ahead and complete the rest of the stringing on of this part of the necklace, then meet me back and I will show you how to add the toggle clasp. Once you get everything strung on, then your necklace should look something similar to this. So that's the ends of it. You can see that I added a little extra over here. I'll explain that here now. When I got done with it, I went ahead and I measured from that 3rd seed bead. So I had the 3 seed beads all the way around to this seed bead over here that you can't see, so all the way over to the other end. It ended up being about 15 inches, and I'm looking for about an 18-inch necklace. So that means adding about an inch or so to add our clasp is what we usually do, so we want our beaded portion to be around 17 inches. So I added about another inch or so of seed beads. I'm going to do the same on the other side before I crimp off the other side, so I've already got my seed beads sitting here. I ended up doing about 18 seed beads. Just make sure it's the same amount that you put on one side and the other, just depending on how long you want your necklace to be. So on this one, I want the pendant is actually facing backwards. I want the pendant to be on this part where we have this nice little green dot showing, so I want that to be the front of my pendant. So it's actually facing backwards right now. So this would be similar to if you were putting it on yourself. So with that being the case, we're going to put our bar part of our toggle on this portion. So go ahead, whoops, I forgot to add the crimp bead, because we're going to use a magical crimper today. So put your crimp bead on first, don't forget to do that. And then we're going to put the bar portion of the toggle on. And then I'm just going to go right back through the crimp tube. Just make sure your wires don't cross on the inside. Make sure you leave plenty of room for your bar to move around. And then all you need to do is just crimp down. So put the crimp bead in the middle of the magical crimpers, and then squish, and then lift up and squish, and keep lifting and squishing and turning. Lift up, squish, turn. There we go. Lift up, turn, squish. Lift up, turn, squish. Do that just a couple of times. I usually do it more than you need to, just to make sure that everything is nice and secure. And then you have a nice little ball of crimp sitting there. And then I always do that tug test afterwards just to make sure I didn't mess up anything. And then cut off the excess with your wire cutters. So now your bar portion of your toggle is on. And then I'll slide that up. And then if any of that wire is left over, just sticking out just ever so slightly underneath that crimp, that ball of crimp, then a lot of times the seed beads will help keep that from irritating any skin. So now I'm going to move that out of the way. I'm going to get all these other beads down to the other side now. And it's kind of fine if I leave it kind of tight at the moment, because I'm not going to crimp off just yet. I need to add these other seed beads really quick. I've already counted out the 18, so that way at least you don't have to listen to me count the 18. So these are already pre-counted. This probably needs to get, like I said earlier, this was the end of the spool. So there's always that sticky portion at the end of the spool that they put that piece of tape to keep the wire on the spool itself. So that was getting kind of hard to get the seed beads on just a second ago. So these are the 18 seed beads that we need on this side to make it the same or similar. So that is how the necklace is going to look so far. Now what I want to do is make sure that we're not going to make this too tight. So I'm going to loosen up my grip on the right hand side over here and make sure that lintel sits okay. This lintel actually has a little bit of a hole to it, so you can see a little bit of the wire sticking out. But I want it to kind of sit like that, where it sits flat, or a little bit more flat. So yeah, you're probably going to see a little bit of wire there, but that's okay. I just want it to kind of sit flat. And then I'm going to twirl it a little bit like this. And twirling it up helps there to be a little bit of movement in the wire, just not a crazy amount of movement. I'm going to put my crimp tube on, and then my other part of my clasp, and yeah, I have a whole lot of wire left over, but that's okay. I'll put it back on the spool when I am done. You can always cut off the amount that you need. You don't always have to start off with a huge amount like I just did. Alright, so now I need to make sure that I'm pulling the right wire. So no, it is twisted in there. So that needs to go around that direction. I do believe. Yeah, it was that. Okay. So this is the part that's probably harder than the other side, because you need to make sure that, one, you're leaving your stuff loose enough to where things can move around and it's not so tight, but you also need to make sure that your crimp tube and your loop and everything is about the same. So I have everything all the way pushed down like this. What I'm going to do is focus the camera first so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to put my fingernail in between the last seed bead and that crimp tube, but make sure the crimp tube is sitting right up against the nail. And then that is where I'm going to crimp down. That will give me enough room in between the crimp tube and that last seed bead, so don't crack the seed bead with the pliers. So put it in the center again, and then squish, pick it up, twist, squish, and do that until it's been twisted a couple of times in the pliers and you don't feel any more resistance. Once that's the case, then you have a nice little ball of crimp on this side. Then you just cut off your excess on this side as well. And then I'll put that part back on the spool because I can probably use that for a bracelet. And then here, let me put it to the front side, is our first necklace that we made out of this Gemstone Italian Trip Gemstone Orphanage box that we got. So this one we're going to use the chain and the Murano glass that we got in the box, and then I'm going to use a toggle clasp on this one as well. So you can see I have a couple different things already cut off. I have already cut one part of the chain. We're essentially going to use all the chain in this necklace. So I've got a 17-inch piece right here. Similar reason for with the previous necklace and everything, as far as we're trying to make about an 18-inch necklace or so. Then I've got my glass, and I've already got a couple of links attached to our eye pin over here. And I've got 2 eye pins out, and I'll show you why in just a minute. So what I'm doing is actually going through and cutting off 2 links of the chain to where there's 2 of the balls that are sitting there. And I'm just varying where I'm cutting off in between this ball and this ball. So on this one I'll probably start here, which would leave a length about like that, and then this one I might go down straight in the center, and then so on and so forth, and just kind of vary it up some. That way you have different lengths of chain that's going to be attached to the eye pin, and then I'll show you what we're going to do with the eye pin in just a moment too. Alright, so to cut the chain, the easiest way I found was just figure out where you want to cut in between the second and the third ball there, which like I said, I'll probably cut right here. And I'm just going to go cut straight across the chain just like that. Obviously cover it up just in case anything starts and flies off the mat. Try to cover it with your hand. And these are very, very small links, so you're going to have little small pieces on your mat. So that's also something else that you'll have to be careful with. See, I've got a couple little small pieces right here that you may or may not be able to see on the video. So just I'm cutting off the rest of this, which ends up being I think 7 links, because there's 3, 4, and then 5, 6. Yeah, I'll have a total of 7 lengths of my chain that will be on this part of the necklace. So I'm just going to cut off the last 2 here, and then it's pretty simple. We're just going to put them on the eye pin, and then I'll show you what we're going to do with the eye pin. So I'm going to try to move some of these out of the way. Alright, let me open the eye pin back up again. So this part can be kind of hard to do when it's far away from your face. So hopefully I'll be able to see what I'm doing. If not, I may have to just show you how to do one and then come back and show you how to do the rest. So now what we're going to try to do is take that last link in that chain, which is so tiny, 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 but we're going to get that last link and attach it to the eye pin. You just want to make sure that that last link is not partially open like that one was. So kind of just tug on it a little bit and make sure it's not the one that you cut off. And then it should just slide on. Like I said, it may be kind of hard for me to do this right now because it's kind of hard, it's kind of far away from my face. So let's see if I can get at least one of these on. Yay! Alright, so that's what I'm going to do next, is I'm going to put all 7 lengths of my chain on here. So I'll go ahead and do that off screen so it's a little bit easier for me to see. And then meet me back and I'll show you the next step. Alright, so once you get all of your lengths of your chain onto the eye pin, it should look something similar to that. So after every time I added the length, I did a little tug test. I just kind of tugged on the link to make sure that it wasn't one of those that we just cut off and it just hadn't fallen off yet, that type of thing. So I did that and make sure everything was going to be sitting the way I wanted it. Made sure that the balls were sitting in alternative lengths, and you know, I just wanted to make sure that it looked good, and I like the way that it looks, so we're going to leave it. Now, if you can see that there is a little bit of daylight in between the end of the loop and the eye pin itself, so we want to make sure that that is closed completely, because if it is open at all, there is that potential that one of these links or multiples could fall out because this chain is so tiny and so dainty. So I'm just tightening this up, just wiggling it back and forth until it closes up completely. So if you make your own eye pins, then that may be something that you don't have to worry about so much, but I had these in my stash. I was using these because I have plenty of these in my stash, so I'm going to use them up before I start making my own. So now we're going to add this to our Murano glass. Now decide on what side that you want to be your front, your back, which one you want on the top, what color you want on the top, what color you want on the bottom. I just did it this way, just where the green's on the top and then the brown's on the bottom. And now I want to make a loop on this side that's going to be similar in size to that side. So to figure that out, that's where this other eye pin comes in. So we just pick up our round nose pliers and we stick our eye pin into the round nose pliers and kind of get an idea of where it's at. So when you hold it to the side like this, it's just about a quarter of the way down. So right around in here is about halfway. See, I'm shaking right now, sorry. So right about in there is halfway. So this is about a quarter of the way down the round nose. So whenever we get to the point where we're going to be making the loop on this guy, we're going to make sure that our loop is about a quarter of the way down the round nose. So now I'm holding the loop with my thumb down here, giving it a little bit of a pressure. I'm putting my pliers up here up against where I've got the back side of the pliers and then the front side of the pliers facing me. So the back side of the pliers is sitting up against the glass itself, and I'm holding it kind of at an angle. And then this is how I'm going to make my bend over. Just like that. So when you close down, then all of a sudden you have a bend over. It's not exactly 90 degrees, but we can kind of play with it and make it 90 degrees. Just like that. Now we're going to check the length of it because it probably needs to be cut down just a little bit. So holding it up against one side of my finger and using the other side of my finger as a gauge, just cut off that little itty bitty extra amount. And then hold on to everything if you can. I already had one piece fly across the room because this is actually my second recording because I didn't like the first one. And then we're going to put our wire in approximately the same spot as the other spot. So that way we can make a loop that is approximately the same size. and then roll this slowly if you have to. I think that's part of my problem since I'm still kind of learning how to make my own eye pins and things like that. I think that's part of my problem is that I try to do things so quickly because I feel like I have it and then it doesn't turn out the way that I want it. And this one's still a little wonky. It still looks a little big. So you know what? We're going to unroll this guy. I'm going to cut off a little bit of the extra because I think it's still a little too big. Okay. You should see my face when I'm doing that. And then we're going to try to re-roll this guy. I wasn't too happy with that, and it seemed like it was a little too big still. There, that looks a little bit better, I think. Now, of course, I lost the 90-degree angle doing all of this, but I think that'll still be okay. Once it's sitting on the necklace, it'll sit something similar to that. So I think that'll be fine. There'll be some movement with the bead. I was trying to get as little movement as possible, but that is okay. I think we'll be okay with that. It's better than the first one that I did, we'll put it that way. So now I know where the middle of my necklace is at. I've already added the toggle clasp. The toggle clasp is added very similar to the previous necklace. I just used 2 jump rings on either side and then put the jump rings on the same way that we were putting the chain on with the eye pin. And then from that jump ring I added each side of the toggle. So I've already laid it down so I know where the middle of it is. So now I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and we're going to open up the eye pin that we just created and then slip this on. Doesn't matter which way unless you have a specific way that you want it to, you know, one side to be the front and one side to be the back. And then just close that back up by twisting it back closed and just make sure it touches. If you need to adjust your loop just a little bit more to make sure everything is touching so that way that dainty little chain does not come out again. And then after you get your pendant on, then you have a nice second necklace that we're making from today's Italian kit from Gemstone Orphanage. Alright, so for our third project for this video, we're going to be using the Mashan Jade and then the polymer clay little heshi beads along with some 8-0 seed beads. We're going to make a bracelet. I'm also going to use one of the magnetic clasps. I chose to do the pink one just because there's a whole lot of pink in the beads, but we don't have, in my version of the heshi beads, I had a whole lot of white and a few different colors and stuff. I had a couple of orange colors in there too, and I don't have any orange in this one, but those are the colors that I chose to use on this. So I decided to use the pink clasp, and then I also have some pink seed beads. If I'm able to figure out what the number of these seed beads are, the Miyuki seed beads, what Miyuki's number is, I'll have that down in the description, as well as all the other seed beads that I typically use. Those are always something that I have down in the description that if you want to purchase, then there should be some links along with it if I'm able to find a link that you can purchase and follow along with me. So the pattern for this one is going to be pretty simple, so this one's going to be a pretty quick one. So it'll be one of your 8-0s, one of the Mashan Jades, and then another 8-0. So we're just going to start off with those 3 beads. And it's about to storm like crazy over here, so hopefully I don't lose power. Then we're going to use a series of our heshis. I'm going to go backwards in the rainbow, basically. So it's a purple, the blue, the green, the yellow, and then the white. Another one of the 8-0s, and then we're going to go backwards. The white, oops, the yellow, the green, the blue, and the purple. So that is what those are going to look like. So I'll put one more of the jades on so you can kind of get an idea of what the pattern is going to look like after that. So there you go. So you put on an 8-0, a jade, an 8-0, and then your heshis, and then an 8-0 in between the rainbow of heshi, and then you start over again. So then the next one would be the purple heshi, and so on and so forth. So this is pretty much all you do for the length of the bracelet. Now I've already pre-strung everything on to get an idea of how long of a bracelet that I would need for the length, or something similar to the length that I usually wear. And that would end up being, if you start off with a jade and you end with a jade, you'll end up with a total of, I think it was 7 or 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7. So 7 jade. So once you have 7 of your jade on, make sure you have a seed bead on afterwards, and then meet me back, and then I will show you how to add on your magnetic clasp to your bracelet. So I will see you back in just a few moments. Alrighty, once you have everything all strung on, your bracelet should look something similar to this. Now you can always do a necklace as well. You can add some more of your heshis in between, or some more seed beads or something like that. Make this a lot longer than just the 7 inches or so that it is right now, and you can make it into a necklace. This is actually about 6.5 inches, something like that. So this is how I double checked and make sure that this would fit on my wrist comfortably. Leave it on the spool and get it about as close as I could together, sitting on my wrist, to see how much room I had left over. So it's going to be just about right as far as the length or the width and everything that we're going to need in order to add our magnetic clasp. So I still have everything still on the spool, and I forgot to say that earlier. I'm using the Soft Flex beading wire again. I'm using the white quartz color in this one. But we're going to leave everything on the spool so that way we use less of our wire. So I'm going to string on the crimp tube. Then I'm going to go through one of the holes of the magnetic clasp. I would suggest to keep your clasps together like this. I mean, because you can always just flip your heart over and it can be something, it can end up with a shape like that instead if you wanted it to. So, but I would always just keep it together like that, just to make sure that you're putting it on in the correct direction that you want to. Now we're going to flip our wire over, and we're going to go back through that crimp tube. This side's always the easier of the two sides. Then leave about however much room that you feel like you're going to need. At least enough room to where your clasp can still kind of wiggle around and everything and move. Make sure your wires are not crossed inside the crimp tube itself. So you want to make sure that they're side by side. Then put the crimp tube in the middle of the crimper and then squish. And then lift up, twist, and squish. Lift up, twist, and squish. So very similar to what we did. In fact, the same process of what we did with the first necklace on this tutorial. And then, like I said, I usually do more turns than you need. And then once you're done, you'll have a nice little ball of crimp like that. So now I'm going to do the tug test. So it looks like it's good. So we're going to cut off the excess of this one. And it's really starting to rain pretty hard. So hopefully I don't lose power. Losing power is not the bad thing, it's the part that makes my camera stop. That's when it becomes kind of a pain. Alright, so how much, or where do you know where to cut off? Once you get all your beads strung down to the other end that we just added the crimp tube to, how do you know how much to cut off after here? So I use anywhere between 4 to sometimes 5 finger widths, and that's only because I need some room to be able to hold on to this comfortably. So about 4 to 5 finger widths, and then go ahead and cut off. String your crimp tube on this side. Now we want to make sure that we're not going to twist your bracelet at all. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of playing around with it and making sure that it's sitting in the correct way the clasp is down here, that it's sitting in the correct way, that it's not twisted, nothing looks funny or anything like that. I'm picking it up straight, and I'm flipping it over and bringing it towards my wire, and then putting my wire on in that fashion. That helps to make sure that that nothing gets twisted in the bracelet while you're trying to get everything situated with that crimp tube and your clasp. So now we're going to pull this down tight. And we want to try to leave about, whoops, see, I knew that was going to happen eventually. It's going to come apart eventually. But we're going to leave about the same amount of wire. Oopsie. Yeah, see, that got really, really loose. Okay, we're going to leave about the same amount of wire as we did on this side as we did on the other side of the magnetic clasp. So I am trying to hold on to the left side of the wire right now. That's the part that's connected to the bracelet. The right side is connected to my right hand, and that's the part that I want to squish down to make it smaller, to make that loop smaller. Alright, and with it being a magnetic clasp, it kind of gets hard to do this sometimes, but it can work. It will work. You just have to be careful and do things slowly. Alright. And it sounds like one of my dogs is whining. Just started storming really bad. Captain has not seen too many thunderstorms yet, so he may be the one that's out there whining right now. Alright, now that loop is just about the same size. It may be a little bit bigger, but we're going to go ahead and crimp right here. I'm afraid if I get it any closer to, or any smaller, then I'm going to make this part too tight. So I'm going to go ahead and crimp, and then hope for the best. Oops, I opened up the crimp a little too wide. That's okay though. What I like about these crimps is that if you accidentally open up your crimp tube, or your crimper, and the crimp tube becomes dislodged from the center of the crimper, just moving it around and everything, you can still kind of even out some of those irregular the parts that don't look regular. I can't say that word at the moment. Irregularities. There we go. Alright. So, there you go. And there's your little ball of crimp. And see, there's a little bit of movement and everything still in the bracelet, so it still worked out pretty good. Alright, so we're just going to cut off this excess of this part. And then I always save these little parts of the excess wire. One of these days I have an idea, excuse me, of coming back and showing you how to use all these little itty bitty small pieces in some sort of project. I have an idea. We'll see if it comes true. And then this is what the bracelet looks like once it's on. And then there's our heart. So it ended up being pretty good size. So it's somewhat loose to where it rolls down my arm just a little bit, but kind of nice. And then if you want to, like I said, you can always flip this around and make it into an oval, more of an oval shape, if you're not so much into the hearts. So there is your bracelet. And those are the 3 quick and easy projects using the Indian Agate collection from Gemstone Orphanage. Comment below and let me know. Do you want a wire working or a bead weaving tutorial next? So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it.